Hey, what's up guys, Chris here from Filmmaker, and today I'm going to share with you how to make an awesome fantasy-based portal, as well as place something behind the portal as kind of like a different plane, using the epic Make Big Films pre-rendered VFX platform. Let's take a look from my short film concept, God of War, Bloodlines of Olympus. Now guys, how sick was that? Welcome to another Filmmaker tutorial in collaboration with the awesome guys over from Make Big Films, tailor-made to show you how to make awesome VFX scenes for your projects in an easy, accessible, and super fun way. I will have the Make Big Films platform link down in the description for you guys to check it out. Now this effect can be tricky to kind of like pull off, but it's actually super easy if you keep in mind one of the cool tricks that I've been using for a while, which is when you have VFX scenes, it's hard to separate something that's meant to be in the foreground and something that's meant to be in the background. For example, let's say the actor standing in front of a portal, an explosion, an airship, whatever that may be. And for the longest time, the way to solve this kind of thing is to use green screen. But that also creates so many production issues and kind of like challenges to make it work on location that is often a very hard thing to pull off. So it becomes way more complex and just hard to pull off properly. But with a trick I want to talk to you guys about, there is an easy fix and still achieve epic cinematic results. Now the trick is to show the effect happening from two different scenes. One kind of like a character close-up, and then cut to a wider scene to show the whole effect taking place. This combination of a few seconds introducing the visual effect shot and being obstructed by something in the foreground sells the fact that the effect takes place naturally, let's say, and it doesn't take the audience out of it by pulling them out and thinking that doesn't look right, why is this not what it's meant to be? But we keep it for such a small amount of time that it makes it very easy to pull off in post-production using rotoscoping tools versus green screen. And then when we cut to the wide shot, everything takes place, and that continuity between the two really sells the effect. We're going to take a closer look at today's specific example during a tutorial in After Effects. But before we do that, I also want to talk to you guys about the importance of filmmaking. If you want to create epic projects like these that feel captivating and set you apart from the crowd, then you need to join me in my Filmmaker program. Why? Because today anyone can make an average video anywhere at any time. But as a filmmaker, you're not just going to be making average videos. You're going to be making cinematic art. With over a decade in the field, I worked in film projects, high-octane commercials, and viral videos. And through all of those, I've created a set of ultimate techniques, as well as hacks and tricks when it comes to filmmaking, which is essentially what you experience every time you see one of my projects. And that is the difference, guys. Through these tailor-made courses, guys, I can take you from zero to film hero in a matter of days, showing you every single trick I have in my book, and of course, how to use it. Because guys, at the end of the day, knowledge is power, so make sure to use it. This is your one-stop platform to becoming a filmmaker. So guys, make sure to check out the link in the description, and of course, use GFMR15 for 15% off when you join me and become Filmmaker. And with that said, let's fire up After Effects and check out how to create the epic fantasy portal effect. Let's take a look. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the two compositions because of the effect taking place twice. This is the first one where we introduce the effect. And as you can see, if I scrub through here, have the character kind of like looking in the space, and behind we have the portal effect starting to take place. As you can see, this is barely, not even a second. But what that allows us to do, as we talked earlier, is to introduce the effect very quickly behind the character, and then cut to our second VFX scene, which is the white, to showcase the whole thing taking place without having the character obstructing the effect that takes place. And we'll have to do some crazy rotoscoping to get the chain out and the arms and the overall body movement. It would just be a nightmare, honestly. But this way, with this trick, introducing it first for just a few frames, really sells the effect, and then we don't have to worry about that. So let's see how it takes place. We have our first shot over here, which is the character, and the first thing we usually have to do is just track the clip a little bit, because we have some slight camera motion happening. This is essential so that when we place visual effect assets, they stick to where they should in space. So here, as you can see, we don't really have much to track, really, because the character is in focus and everything else is out of focus. But actually, you'll be surprised. Even so, you can still get some markers to track and stick a VFX element. So the way you do this is you simply right-click, track and stabilize, and track motion. You'll be introduced with this point right here, which is fine. We'll just need to make it a little bit bigger, because as it is now, it's quite small. So let's make it a bit bigger. And I'm going to track that hillside over there. And it's always cool to have some form of contrast when you're asking the program to try to figure out the camera movement. And here, as you can see, we have this kind of like angle for the hill, and we have the sky, and then we have the hill itself. And it's a very particular shape, as you can see. So what the small square does is it tells the program what to track, and the bigger square is where to track it to. The smaller it is, the faster the processing. The larger something like this is, the longer it takes. But after you do that, you scroll down here in your tracker and you press Analyze Forward. And of course, the program is going to scrub through, analyze the clip for you, and give you the data. What you do after is you go to your composition over here and you go to Layers, New, Null Object, as you can see right here. Then you jump back and you say, hey, you know that tracker we just did? I want you to basically link it to that null object. So you hit Edit Target, you select the null, press OK, and then you hit Apply. Once you do that, you have a null object tracked in space to link any visual effect assets. I've already done that, obviously, just to save us some time. So as you can see, if I scrub through it, that null object over there is stuck to the scene. And that means the portal that we're going to bring in from Make Big Films is going to be stuck in as well. It might be simple or seem as not that important, but this is one of the most important steps to do. So now that we have that, we're ready to bring our dark portal in as a VFX asset and start working with it. So this is how the original asset is pre-rendered. I mean, you can see that with a camera movement, it just seems like it's just like, floating in space. What you need to do next is, one, link it to the null, but also create a mask or a map to tell the program, hey, this portal, I want you to show it behind this shape. How do we do that? Well, we go to Layer, New, Solid. You can make it white, you can make it black, you can make it whatever you want, but usually just white or black just to make our lives easier. You hit OK, and it makes everything black because it's a black solid, right? So then we de-isolate it, and that means basically the layer is not shown. Then we go up to our tools and we select our pen tool. And then we go roughly to the beginning where we have our tracking data, and we're going to start now creating a shape that follows the blade and part of the character. As you can see here, guys, I'm going a bit fast just to show you how it's done, really. So we create our shape here, here, here. This can be quite tedious, but once you've done one frame, it's going to turn quite a bit easier. But again, depending on the complexity of the move, it might take you a while. So now that we have our blade map, basically, if I open the solid, you can see what it does. It basically creates that black solid on top of our original recording. So what we do now is we say, okay, cool. You know that VFX asset I dropped in? I want to make it visible except for the black solids. What you do is you go over here, and if you cannot see any kind of like toggle modes, as in track matte, you just go down here and you toggle the switch right here, and then you can see that you have a track matte. So what I do now, I select to follow the black solid. And what it's going to do is going to show it where the black solid is. But I'm like, no, actually, I don't want that. I want the opposite. I want to show the effect where that black solid is not. And this is the basis of what we're talking about here. Now, as you can see, it looks very rough, right? If I go to my map and I hit F, it brings the feathering value of my mask. So if I start feathering this, you can see, if we zoom in there actually, that the mask gets softened. This is how you blend those two together. By working around these values and playing around with the right settings, because it would really depend on your scene and what you filmed and how you filmed it, this is how you kind of like crank down on what the exact settings you need to apply. But the methodology is what I'm showing you guys here. So let me quickly delete these because we already have all of this available to us. So I'm going to show you guys now again. So this is the blade map that I have here, guys, as you guys can see. And what it does is it follows for a few frames the motion and the path of the recording. The way you do this is you press M to bring up the mask properties. And as you can see here, it says mask path. By hitting the little clock, you create a keyframe. And when you scrub through and you go to this mode, let me actually turn off the solid so we can see what's happening. You can see that the mask points themselves move. What that means is that I went here and I clicked my mask and I moved it in space to keep track of the blade and the character at the same time. So as we grow here, you can see, especially at the end, because that's where I put the most attention, because that's when the portal intercepts the character as well. We can see how the masks have all these keyframes, which, trust me, this is nothing. That's like easy. It will take you like 10, 15 minutes max. Follow the motion so that the portal keeps being behind the main character. The cool thing is that we only have to do this for not even a second, which is what, like 20 frames, 20 photographs, whatever you want to call them, if you go frame by frame, and that is it. When I hit my portal VFX layer and I change its track matte to say, hey, show it, but I want to show it behind my solid, this is the final effect that takes place. Of course, what I need to do to my portal layer is to select this parent and linked whip, drag it over, and link it to my null object that we created at the start, because there is a slight camera handheld motion. So now, if we play this all at once and see it, how it works out in one go, we can see that the portal gets introduced, but also moves along with the camera motion because of our track null. It also is shown behind what is meant to, in this case, the blade and the character as we scrub through. And we're all good to go because the effect gets introduced. It looks very realistic because it's behind the characters, is obstructed. It also moves with the original camera motion. And now, because we really don't want to keep doing this, right? We don't want to keep kind of like rotoscoping that hand, the character being in front. We do the smart thing, which is to cut to the wider VFX shot and show the effect taking place without the character obstructing it, which is way, way easier. The method is the same, but let's take a look at it one more time, and I also want to show you guys some very advanced thinking when it comes to compositing pre-rendered visual effects assets. So let's take a look into our white shot. Once more, we have our original kind of like recording. Now this has been pre-color graded. Let's say I haven't done the final grade, which I personally call Cinegrade, but it has been pre-color graded just to help us with the implementation of this tutorial. Otherwise, you would see quite a lot of layers and will be a bit hectic. But let's stick to what we're doing. So this is our original composition, guys. Here with our original clip. If you noticed from the first example, the first thing we do is to actually track our clip, because once again we have a slight handheld camera motion. And how do we do this? Exactly the same step. Select our clip, right click, track and stabilize, set our key points, track and analyze, create a new null object, and then link to the null. What we're left out with after is a nice null object that sticks to our plane, and any visual effect asset we bring afterwards can be linked to that. So now that we have that, we're good to go. Let's bring in our portal asset, and of course take the web and link it to a null. Now, if you notice, guys, this is a portal pre-composition, which if I double click this, it brings us here, and the portal gets introduced and it moves around, and this is where it's linked to our original null. I'm going to explain you very quickly why I pre-composed the portal itself, and then I introduced it to my composition. The reason is because I wanted to manipulate the portal effect itself, because if we take a look at the original, it looks quite different. Now, what's different is not also the overall color grading of the portal itself, but it also has kind of like been manipulated to have a different light roll-off compared to the original. What is light roll-off, guys? If we take a look, let me take this off. If we take a look at the original shot, we can see that we have a very overcast, misty mountain setup, but the light gets introduced from the top over here. And if you notice the character, as the light carries on to the ground, it becomes darker and darker. What that means is that this is very evenly lit and is exactly how Make Big Films should have made it, so that we have control afterwards. So what I did here is we have the portal effect take place, and of course, like I said, I said to the program, hey, you know what? Make the blues, gold is yellow, and make the smoke kind of like from a warm magenta kind of like tone down to kind of like a misty cyan bluish cold kind of hue, right? And then I created new layers by going to layer, new adjustment layers. And then I put a few masks in these adjustment layers, as you can see, guys, here. And then I said, hey, let's darken the bottom part and let's make the top part a bit lighter. So if I take these off and then I bring them back on, you can see the difference. So what I did here is I said, hey, you know what, that awesome VFX asset that I have, I want the top part of it to be brighter and I want the bottom part to be darker, because when I place it in, I want it to fit the light of my scene. Now, this is quite advanced, but I just want to be honest with you guys and show you the thinking when it comes to compositing super cool VFX assets. So I'm going to take the second portal off here, going to leave my pre-composed portal in, and we're going to go back to our original thing. So I bring in my composition, I link it to the null object because it's already been linked in my pre-composition, and now I have this. Super easy and good to go. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that the portal gets introduced, gets tracked around, it matches the location and the light direction and all that cool stuff, but nothing is actually behind the portal. And that's because it's see-through, right? This is the portal and we're meant to show something in the background. Now, I'm going to show you how super easy that is to do. And of course, you can put whatever you want. You can put your own fridge if you wanted to as a portal. The way we do this is the exact same technique we used over here to abstract the blade and the character from the portal, but technically it's kind of like the opposite. What we do is create good layer, new, solid, again, yeah, cool. We set it to be behind the portal, right? So the portal always shows in front of it. And then we go over here and we select our ellipse tool and we make a nice kind of like circle. Not in our portal, of course, in our black solid right there. Here's the cool thing now. We can tell the program, hey, I'm going to bring a new scene in. I'm going to tell you to follow the black solid we just made, which is the shape of the portal. And I want you to show a different clip playing on top. What that's going to do is going to create the separation, and the portal is going to take place because it's on top, right? The black solid and whatever we bring is going to be behind. And the last thing is our clip itself. So we created a 3-layer kind of like progression of things we can set up. Now I've already done this, so once more, let's take a look at how it's done. So we have our other plane map, black solid layer, guys, and we've made it into a nice ellipse kind of like shape to follow our portal. And then I brought in this clip right here, which is essentially, how would you call this? It's basically Greece. It's near kind of like Athens at the Parthenon. That's where I'm originally from, by the way. You guys ever wondered where the accent is from? Spoiler warning, it's been revealed. So I chose this because God of War, Kratos, and the mythology, it's Greek. So I was like, hey, you know what's going to be cool if we actually show Greece before Kratos destroyed it all in God of War 3. Now, the way we do this is we place our new clip, whatever that may be, underneath our black solid, and then we do the exact same thing. We go to our track mat and we select our new other plane map, which is the black solid we created, and we say, hey, I want you to show this only on that. And guess what? Because it's behind the portal, right? The portal plays on top of it or in front of it, and that creates the illusion that our visual effect is real in terms of its physics or how it should look, how it should behave, and so forth, guys. And that is 90% of our visual effect done. Now, if you play this through, everything happens and it's cool and it's cinematic and it makes sense. The last thing I usually do to effects like this is introduce some form of distortion, whether that is an explosion and it's energy-based or it's fantasy and magic. Introducing distortion is always a very good thing because it just blends everything together, but also creates, and again, the illusion that energy and kind of like manipulation and air and distortion all take place because of the visual effect asset we introduced. And when you watch this as the audience and you're in it, you know, all of these things coming together really help sell the imagery and the story you try to convey. So what I do as a last kind of thing is to create a new layer, new adjustment layer over here, which I've already done, and I can name it distortion. Now, I use some third-party plugins, but in this situation, I just kept it within After Effects. So to show you that you can actually do some really cool stuff with the built-in tools as well. If you want to go pro level, you would need some of the plugins that I use, but in this situation, in this project, let's take a look at the two effects that is going to implement the distortion that I'm talking about. One of them is called Radial Blur, and you find that under Effects, Blur and Sharpen, and then Radial Blur. The only thing you need to do is to set your amount and also change the type to zoom, because originally it's on spin. That creates kind of like a force, kind of like push effect. The second one is Turbulent Displace, and you find that under Effects, distort, turbulent displace. This one is a bit tricky, guys. So if I press U to bring up my keyframes, we need to introduce this as the portal gets introduced, but then we need to animate it kind of like dying down after the effect, after the portal was introduced. Because if we don't, it's just going to keep wobbling things around, and that's a bit, it's just distracting and takes you out of it. But if you introduce it at, let's say, amount level 5 at the beginning, and then I will scrub through, you see how it gets reduced all the way to 0 at the end. What that's going to do is introduce the effect that takes place, as you guys can see, and then it's going to kind of like take its transparency out, or basically make it kind of like cool down back to normal. That animation with our keyframes is what kind of like sells effects like these when placed on top of visual effect assets. So the way you do this, guys, is like we've shown before, you basically click the clock icon to create keyframes, and then you scrub through and you say, hey, when it first gets introduced, I want it at 5. And as it dies down, I want back to 0. Now, these values themselves would highly depend on your project, your VFX scene, and what you needed to do. I'm here to show you the thinking and kind of like the methodology behind this. It will be up to you watching this tutorial to take the time and learn from it, and also apply it to what you do next. If it was up to me, I would highly suggest you guys to just, when you first start out or you're in intermediate, is to try to copy things. Copy someone's is the best way to get understanding and experience, so that your brain and your creativity can start rolling out. So don't worry to copy someone, guys. Get inspiration and try to implement what you learn in tutorials like this, so you can pull it off as well. The last thing we need to do when it comes to effects like this is to kind of like create a circle with another kind of like solid, and then link our distortion effect to that solid, and kind of like just expand it so it starts with a shape, and as we go through, kind of like expands out to kind of like create this kind of like shockwave effect. The way you do this is you press M twice, and this brings up the mask properties, and you can see the same exact thinking. We have keyframes that we keyframed, and we expand them so that the mask, the circle, goes kind of like in a pulse motion. So as you guys can see here, mask expansion is at -445, which basically makes it nothing, right? And as we scrub through, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, all the way to 2291, whatever that means, right? It's basically bigger than our composition. So what this little animation shows here is that, hey, we went to like a dot because it's -600 in the circle right here, and with this span of keyframes, boom, it just exploded. This is how you kind of like cheat a pulse distortion effect by using this solid mask, linking it as a track matte to our distortion layer, and then using radial blur and turbulent displace in combination to create this kind of like pulse effect. Okay guys, that's a wrap for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course let me know what you thought in the comments down below. And when you get the time, make sure to put what we've learned in this tutorial to use. Of course, if you have not joined me yet as a guerrilla filmmaker, make sure to check the link down in the description, because that is the one place where you can learn with me how to pull off awesome film projects, no matter the scale, from small ones like this all the way to big ones. That said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay awesome and creative.